Alright, today I am discussing the bare essentials of what you need to start ice fishing. Actually, let me move some of this stuff closer so I don't have to move as far to grab it. So, first off, we're going to go over some basic ice safety. For new clear ice, the general safe guideline is 4 inches, which is roughly 10 centimeters. Now anytime on the ice, so that was weird. Give me 1 second while I fix this. Huh. Okay. I have actually never had this happen before, so... that's why that broke. Okay, we'll have to replace that. Fortunately, these are cheap. That'll work for the demonstration. So, these are ice safety picks. They can be just worn in your pocket. Some people like to put them in their sleeves. But the point of these is if you fall into the water, one, don't panic. Make sure you're exhaling when you go in. Then once your head is above water, continue to breathe normally. Jam these into the ice. And what'll happen is this spike will lodge into the ice, allowing you to pull yourself out. Once you're out of the water, don't stand up. Rather roll in the direction you came from for at least 10 meters so that you know you're on safe ice, and either change and test a way around there to where you're going, or if you're shaken up and not going to be safe on the ice anymore, go home and regroup. That's the best that can be said there. But those are an essential. A useful tool year-round, but especially on early season, is a spud bar. Now, mine's wrapped in hockey tape for shock absorption because these are one of the key ways of determining safe ice. When it's really early season, you're not sure about a body of water. Start where you know the water's shallow and just pound it until you've reached 4 inches, which is useful to tape off. In my case, I know that's 4 inches right there. Well, actually, right there is 4 inches. So, say it takes 5 blows to get to 4 inches. So then every few feet, stop and give 5 blows in the same spot at the same force you used to determine how many blows it takes to get. If you can consistently get out to an area like that, that's safe. If it's gray ice, you want 8 inches. And the process is going to be the same. These are also useful in the early season as the ice is thin, so you can use these to cut a square hole out to use for ice fishing, because you do need to get through the ice to the water. These are relatively inexpensive, and I actually use them late season for blowing out the bottom of my holes, at least as long as I can get to the bottom of my hole. We do get ice that's 5 feet thick up here, so that makes a little bit of a different matter. All right. And a piece of safety equipment frequently overlooked. I don't know, I fish with people who don't use them. A pair of cleats. That way you're not slipping all over the ice. Slipping on the ice is a good way to get hurt or damage gear. Or even lose gear. I've come close to slipping and knocking rods in the water. So, not absolutely essential for safety, but highly recommended. And now we get to the first bit of fishing. You're going to need an auger. I currently use a manual auger. I use the Mora Ice Finbore 3 8-inch, and looks like that. And this video is, like I said, all about the basics of what you need to ice fish. What I like about this is the offset handle, although that's not a necessity, but it does allow a lot faster drilling, which is good with a hand auger, because they're already a bit slower. And that just turns and shears the ice away. And those ice shavings are going to be in your hole. So, and they will prevent you from getting your lure in said hole. So, in that case, what do? Well, once you're done with that, what do? You take, bent, straighten that up. You take a scoop. These are cheap. They're about $5 Canadian. You stick that in your hole. Wait for a second for the water to drain from it, like your Yeah, you're just straining it. Lift it out. Put that through the side, repeat until clear. If you're fishing outside of a shelter, you're going to have to do this frequently. And there's no way around that. You're fishing in sub-freezing temperatures, so ice is part of the game. Now, a lot of places let you fish with 2 rods. So, the easiest solution to a second rod, if you don't want a bunch of rods or you're just starting out, is the tip up. These are pretty inexpensive. You can get line inexpensively. This is spooled with 50-pound line. I typically use these for northern pike. For drifting deadbait. This one is made by HT, but the brand shouldn't matter. This is one of the most common modern style tip-ups you'll find. So what happens is this holds the bait down here under the water so the spool doesn't freeze. And when a fish takes that, and ideally that was on a heavier setting. Ideally what you want to do is set it on the lightest setting you can get away with on the given day and for the weight you're using, so that it trips and fish don't detect any tension on it. And whoa, okay, that is, something is wrong with that. Okay, so I have to figure that out, but okay, whatever. Anyways, once that's out, you come set this, you can either grab there to break it, or you can lay it to the side, which is especially useful if you're fishing for pike. Lay that to the side, hold that. Once you start feeling tension, hand over hand, line that in, maneuver your fish up the hole. Don't wrap it around your hand if a fish decides to take a run. You may end up with just layers of line spooled around your hand. And that can obviously lead to some pretty serious damage. Let me just fix that really quick. I don't see anything wrong with that. I attach the bells myself. I like having them there because if I'm actively jigging and not paying attention to my rod, I will 100% of the time miss the strike. And likely the fish, because there is no drag system, so it's incredibly easy for fish to get off of one of these. And that comes to rods. This is a medium heavy, which is good for walleye and fish around that size. I prefer to use a pistol grip because it allows me to give very minute movements. But can't say what you're fishing for, so I will just give rough guidelines. Light is panfish, so crappie, bluegill, stuff like that, or ultralight. Lights are perch and panfish, small trout. Mediums are medium-sized trout to smaller, medium-sized walleye. Medium heavy is medium walleye to large walleye, small pike, large trout, excluding lake trout. We're going to want to go to something like a heavy, or in the case of one of my rods, an extra heavy. But just get a rod that suits what you need, get a line that suits what you're fishing for, and work with it. You can upgrade later, you can buy more later. You're just starting out. So with the rods, you're going to want a rod holder. Technically, I think they're actually supposed to sit in like that. I'm lazy. I just lay mine like that. They're great if you've got to run to your tip up because it's flagged, or you're setting it down, or if you're dead sticking a second rod, which was just a rod sitting there soaking with bait on it. And I highly suggest a chair. This is a folding chair. You've seen it in some of my videos that I picked up for $15 at Smoke and Fish in Selkirk. If you're ever there fishing Lockport, I highly recommend stopping by Smoke and Fish, or if you're up on your way to Lake Winnipeg to go fish Balsam Bay for their trophy greenback walleye, stop by Smoke and Fish, great local company. But your chances are you're going to want to sit at some point, so a chair is essential for that. Oh, I still got a thing over here. So that brings us to the topic of tackle. Oh, no, it doesn't. You need a way to measure your fish. One, to see if you're within, or if you've got a master angler, which is a trophy fish, or at least here in Manitoba we have the master angler program for catching fish of certain sizes. But also to make sure you're not over or under the legal length to keep. So there is that, and with that you need to know your regulations. Like here in Manitoba, it's not legal to keep any walleye shorter than 35.5 centimeters, which is around up roughly 14 inches. And now we're on to tackle, which is highly variable in what you're fishing for. So, never hurts to have an assortment. These are one of the hottest lures this year. I haven't really had a chance to test them out yet. They don't work too well in the current on the red. But people have had a lot of good work or good luck with them on the lake. These are Timber Final Impulse spoons. Tip them with a bit of bait and jig. I actually don't know much about them. I think they're sort of a flutter spoon type of deal. But spoons, always a good go-to. Some larger jig heads. I never have too many jig heads, so glow jigs, which actually let me charge one of those up for a minute. Glow jigs are definitely really nice, especially if you're fishing at night. Little nymphs, flies. I like to carry some stinger hooks. Yeah, some. Tube jigs and corresponding jig heads. Carry both flasher and thumper jigs. Oh. So that's a thumper. They create a consistent, steady thumper or thumping in the water. And flasher jig heads, which you saw in my previous video about man versus machine, which those are great for using cut bait for walleye or burbot, Mariah, some people call them, ling. Yeah, that ought to be charged up enough, so I will be back in 1 second. Oh yeah, that's good. So that's the glow jig. I do carry an ultraviolet light. Don't look into them, that was stupid. But that can really draw strikes if you're fishing after dark or in really murky water. Anyways, I'm going to put that away. One that works really well for me in a wide variety of colors is the Northland Buckshot spoons. Tip it with a minnow head and drop it near the bottom and give just a snap up with your rod and let it drift back down. Rattle baits. are an essential. These are live target rattle baits here. You don't have to go that expensive. These are a bit pricey, but you can get similar products for under $5. It all depends on how you're going, and if you're watching a video on basics, I'm assuming you're probably quite new to ice fishing, so I wouldn't worry too much about really high-end or expensive equipment other than what you need to be out there safe and actually get a line in the water. Now in with the tip-ups earlier comes in this guy, which is a quick strike rig. For this you take a whole bait fish. I prefer a 6 to 10 inch mackerel. I feed 2 of the hooks 2 times in towards the back, 2 times in somewhere in the front, so it either sits like that or horizontally in the water. Fish takes it, and you have the option to set immediately or let it run a bit, then set the hook and fight it in. And swim baits are another I would suggest for any beginner. I cut the bottom treble off because you're only allowed 2 hooks in Manitoba per line in Manitoba, so I find that fish tend to go for the front or back. That's where the majority of the hookups I get are. Frequently the back, actually. So what these will do is as you lift it, they'll swim, they'll turn, they'll do figure eights in the water, and they'll rotate, and they actually mimic a fish swimming very closely, which can be very enticing, especially if you use some sort of a bite stimulant like Procure or a little bit of bait. I'm a huge advocate of Procure. It's been great. And you're going to want a hook sharpener. You got to keep those hooks sharp. You want to be able to drag it across your finger and have it just barely break skin, not draw blood, but you want it to be kind of sticky. If it's not sticky, it's not sharp enough. You want it to go in and you want it to come out smoothly and cleanly, which allows an easier hookup. It allows you to hook bait on there easier, and I find it lets it come out of the fish a bit easier too, especially because you tend to get hooked on the outside of the mouth a lot more frequently than you would with a dull hook. And you need scissors, pliers, wire cutters, split ring pliers, forceps, and if you live somewhere where there's northern pike, which is a lot of the northern hemisphere, pretty much anywhere you're going to get ice over in the world, at least in the northern hemisphere, you're going to need jaw spreaders. Careful with these, only use them if the hook is in the mouth, deep, and with pike, if the hook's too deep to get out without damaging the fish, you're probably better off just cutting the hook. Even if it's an expensive jig, it's painful, I know, but pike are pretty good at rejecting it from the research I've read. They can get the lure out within a couple of days on their own. and then make a full recovery. So that's just a bit I saw on the CBC. Actually, while reading about pike fishing, it popped up, so I read that. So don't worry too much there. And I hope you enjoy the wonderful sport of ice fishing. See you next time on Red River Wilds Fishing. And until then, safe fishing and tight lines.